Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and let's get ready for KnockOut TV.
Welcome to KnockOut TV, Mark Breland. Mark, 5-time Golden Glove champion, correct? Gold medalist, world champion. Does any one of those mean more to you than the other?
Well, the gold medal meant a lot because that's something no one can take away from you. But then, winning the Golden Gloves in New York, I went to see Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier in '71. I was 7 years old, and my dream was always to fight in the Garden. And when I turned 16, I fought in the final at the Garden. That was a big dream.
One of the greatest amateurs of all time. You hear that all the time. I mean, Teofilo Stevenson I think of, and Mark Breland I think of, which is scary. I mean, these are two great fighters. You know, not much talk about your pro career, and you've had a great pro career. Does that bother you at all that, you know, you're known as a 5-time Golden Glove champion?
No, it doesn't bother me. I mean, you know, I did what I had to do. You know, I have no regrets in whatever. I mean, I've done a lot of things that no one's never done. So.
Now, like you said before, fighting in the Garden has got to be the specialist thing for you.
Oh, I mean, that's like a dream come true. You know, being 7 years old and seeing Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier and just hearing the crowd, and then you get that opportunity when I was 16, I was like, wow. You know, to me, that was bigger than the Olympics.
I understand. You know, I got a chance to interview Joe Frazier, and I was 10 in 1971. And I said to him, Joe, because of you, I'm a boxing fan. Right. And you were actually in the arena for Ali Frazier. Now,
I was way at the top.
Okay, I was going to say, how'd you get in there? First of all, who took you to that fight?
No, this was a man, God bless him. His name was Elijah Best. They called him Goat. He was a short old man. He's the one who taught me how to box. He started me boxing, and he had got tickets for that fight.
Absolutely amazing. All right, let me ask you one question. Who were you rooting for in that fight, Ali or Frazier?
Ali. I was always a big Ali fan.
Now, you punch like Frazier, though.
Oh, yeah.
Scary. Now, a lot of people compare you to Tommy Hearns.
Yeah.
Tommy Hearns, we got a chance to come on the show. Great fighter. Same thing. You got that left jab with that powerful right hand.
Right.
Who was it influential to you growing up, fighter-wise?
Oh, Tommy was a lot. I mean, I boxed Tommy when I was 18 years old. I used to spar with him a lot. I sparred with Milton McCory, a lot of guys from Crown. I used to watch a lot of the tapes on Tommy Hearns. So that gave me a lot of inspiration. I love Sugar Ray Robinson, Fredo Benitez, a lot of short guys, but Tommy was like a big inspiration.
Now your career is over, now you're in the corner now, training fighters.
Yeah.
That must feel good.
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. You know, it's you know, you get to give back some of the things that you know. Now, I mean, I learned more now than I did when I was boxing, so now it's much easier.
You had a great career. I wish you all the best now in somebody's corner because you have a lot of experience, a lot of influence on those young fighters. Mark Breland, it's a pleasure having you on KnockOut TV. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Welcome to KnockOut TV, Bobby Czyz. New Jersey legend, should we say?
You know, I'd like to live up to that. Maybe someday, at least in the old days back in grammar school, and I go back there to talk once in a while for like career day, I have some urban legend running around the neighborhood.
That is great. Okay, you grew up in Wanacue.
I actually grew up in Orange, in East Orange.
Okay.
Not very far from the Robert Treat Hotel itself. Ampere Parkway in East Orange until I was 10. Then I moved to Wanacue, where I grew up about the next 15, 17 years until I moved all over.
Okay. You started your career young as an amateur.
10 years old.
Okay, 10 years
Junior
old.
Olympics.
Junior Olympics, Costello's gym in
Oh
Patterson?
yeah, Lou Costello Sports
Okay.
Club used to be on Pacific and Gould. Now I heard it's not there anymore.
I think it's gone.
It's gone.
Now, what I remember most about you is not fighting Holyfield, okay, which is probably your greatest moment in the ring.
One of.
Okay. The days of Ice World in total.
Well, you know, Ice World was a great place because it had the North Jersey community, and they got behind the young kid they said was white, bright, and polite, but could he really fight? Excuse me, but, you know, I proved that I could fight, won 3 world titles, competed in 6 different weight divisions, but that crowd I can never forget for as long as I'm going to live.
Well, I mean,
it's just beautiful.
I'm sure walking out of that entrance in your home state, I mean, plus, homegrown, sort of say, right?
Yeah, no, I'm a Jersey boy. That's it.
Greatest moment in the ring?
Greatest moment in the ring would have to be winning my first world title, because that day, that immediately validated me and made me eternal. I live forever in the history books as a world champion on that day, and for as long as I held the title, and that can never be taken away from me. Forever forward, if you look back in time, in 1986, on that day, September 6th, that's me. I'm the world champion.
Who'd you beat for that title?
Slobodan Kachardy,
Okay.
it's funny because he was a 1980 Olympic gold medalist. The Olympics we boycotted, and I never got to go to.
Yes, now, let's talk a little bit about that, because you were on that U.S. team, okay? Now, fate had it
I got in a car
that
accident.
you got into a car accident. Go ahead, I'm sorry, tell the story.
No, it's
because
okay. I got into a very bad car accident. I fell asleep at the wheel. Unfortunately, over the course of my life, I've fallen asleep at the wheel many times. Gotten in a couple bad accidents. This particular accident bashed up my face, broke my nose, cut my face pretty severely, and I had to withdraw from the boxing trip because my nose had to set for 8 weeks, and the trip was only 10 weeks away. I couldn't train, so I withdrew, and the plane crashed, and I went on to win my world titles, and I was basically slated to die in 1980. A few years back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Count your blessings. Absolutely.
29 years ago, I'm not supposed to be here.
No, but 29 years later, you are here, and we're glad you are. Now, after your pro career, you got into broadcasting, and I'll tell you something. You were a great broadcaster.
Well,
you were very well spoken. You knew the game, obviously.
Yeah, I knew the game, and here's the funny thing. Normally, a compliment for a fighter is, well, he's well spoken. Or
you're
people
absolutely
say
right.
he's well spoken for a fighter, or hey, he's not bad looking for a fighter, because they're used to seeing people with cauliflower ears, flat noses, which I have a little bit of, and I've never been cut. I've been fortunate, but I'm a member of Mensa, so I have a genius IQ, which technically makes me smarter than 98% of the people in the world, but I chose to fight for a living.
Yes, you did.
So I could still retain my ability to speak. And I also know that puncher's dementia does happen. It just didn't happen to me.
You know, you were touted as the smart kid coming out, going to, college.
Yeah, I had pre-med scholarships.
Absolutely.
A senatorial appointment to West Point, but I wanted to chase this dream of being famous, of being special.
Well, you were famous, and you're very special, and it's a pleasure having you on KnockOut TV. And I was a fan of yours. And you know one thing I see often, and I'm sure you watch this, ESPN Classics.
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
your second pro fight, which was a tough fight.
It was.
That was great. They show that on ESPN Classics all the time. You have to check that out. I'm sure you've
I've
watched
seen it
that.
a couple dozen times, and I never, I always get a kick out of how, when you first move into pro ranks, and you're looking at yourself like, oh, what a mistake. Oh, look at that mistake. Because after the fact, you've already polished up much of that and professionalized yourself.
Right.
So I watch the fights and I cringe sometimes, like, damn, I wasn't that good back then.
Well, you're critiquing yourself, and that's normal. That's a good athlete.
You know what? I'm an expert analyst by heart.
Absolutely. Now, thank you for coming on KnockOut TV. It's always a pleasure. Bobby Czyz, fan favorite, New Jersey. Thanks for coming.
Pleasure.
Absolutely. Now, let's go back. We've talked before. Best fighter of all time.
Sugar Ray Robinson.
No hands down, no question.
He'd be 1 through 9 of top 10.
Okay. Who's 10?
Henry Armstrong.
Really?
Henry Armstrong in 1937 had 21 fights, won 20 of them, including 3 titles, 20 by knockout. That ain't
Pretty
bad.
impressive.
That ain't
Pretty
bad.
impressive. Now, you've been doing this forever, okay? Who's your favorite fighter? Who's Bert Sugar? Who couldn't you wait to see fight?
I loved Muhammad Ali. I loved Sugar Ray Robinson. I actually saw him several times. And there were some others I loved, like Holly Mims, because I'm a Washingtonian. He was out of Washington, and they always spell his name wrong. It was Holley. I loved, Carmen Basilio was always exciting. Granted, he had a face that looked like the side of the stitching of a hardball. But there were certain great fighters that you always waited for. You knew they were going to give you 120%.
Absolutely. And coming back to Manny Pacquiao, here's one of those guys.
I think so.
And I think so too. And it's a rarity nowadays. We talk about on the show, we talk about this a lot, that these guys, these fighters, they fight not to lose.
Well, that's the old amateur way. The old amateur way was you would fight, and then I tried it. I wasn't any good. My nickname was the Great White Hopeless. But the old amateur way was you would have a tournament. And even if you won, you'd be fighting the next day, maybe that evening. And so the whole thing was not to get cut. Not to get cut, because even if you won, you couldn't go on.
Sure.
So they would fight like this, just to score points. And you see some of the pros today, like Klitschko, who are fighting in this safety-first manner. And it's galling because nobody told them they were pros now. I mean, I asked Vladimir, I said, Vladdy, you have two hands. Did you understand the union limit is 2? You can use both?
Did he understand?
He understands.
Because he actually used both his last fight.
Yes.
Finally, which was great. Okay. Now, always have the cigar in your hand.
Yeah, it gives me something to hold on to in case I'm falling down at my age.
We had a trivia question on the show that your great uncle was Red Auerbach.
Yeah, yes.
Is that true?
Yes. Arnold. Uncle Arnold.
Did you call him Uncle Arnold?
Yes, that was his name. Now, he told me a wonderful story about cigars.
Go ahead.
He said that when they moved from Boston Garden over to the Fleet Center, they auctioned everything but the parquet floor off, including one of his quote-unquote victory cigars, which went for $500. He said it wasn't even his brand. It was somebody else that just thrown the
Somebody's got that on their mantelpiece in the collector's item.
Somebody threw it down.
That's funny. That is great. But he was...
Yes.
Were you close with him? I mean, were you a basketball fan?
Yeah, only when he... Ultimately, yes, but when he had the Washington Capitals. I was raised in Washington.
Okay.
And in the 49-50 era, he had Bob Ferrick and Bones McKinney and Freddie Scolari, and I loved the team because he would take me to the game free.
Great. Of course. And
so
you meet all the players and all that. That's great.
So, but Red, or Arnold, was a lovely, gentle person and funny as a Dickens, and loved his cigars. I mean, I had a great time knowing the people in Washington, the Shirley Poviches, who lived next door to me.
Right.
Shirley Beatty, who was Shirley MacLaine.
Sure.
I even knew Goldie Hawn because I knew her father, Jack. And, it was just a nice way to go through your childhood.
That is all year round, all that. Now, does Red or Arnold, is that a big reason that you have that cigar?
I just like them.
No? Okay.
I figured if it wasn't for 25 of these a day smoked by Winston Churchill, we'd all be speaking German.
Well said. Well said. Bert Sugar, always a pleasure having you on Knockout TV. Thank you so much.
Thank you for putting up with me.
You're the best. Welcome to Knockout TV, the Easton Assassin, Larry Holmes, former heavyweight champion of the world. It's a pleasure having you on Knockout TV.
Thanks, I'd like to be here.
Now listen, 48 straight wins, okay? How important was that streak to you?
Well, the streak was very important to me because I proved a lot of people wrong when they said I couldn't make it. My legs were too small, I couldn't punch. I'm just a copy of Muhammad Ali, and I proved them wrong. And we held that position for 7.5 years. Hey, I proved a lot of people wrong, so it was very important for me to do that.
That was very impressive. Now you fought Ernie Shavers, Muhammad Ali, Jerry Cooney, Ken Norton. The list is endless, and these are the greatest fighters of the 80s of all time. I remember the Cooney fight, one of my favorite fights of all time. You were amazing in that fight, absolutely impressive. Do you have a favorite fight? Do you look back and say,
Kenny Norton is the favorite fight because that's when I won the title in 1978. That's when people said that I couldn't make it, I wouldn't win, and I did. I proved them all wrong. So therefore, I just really wanted to prove it to them and to myself that I could do it. Set my mind to it, I did it. And you know, from that day on, I didn't lose for 7.5 years.
No, you didn't. Impressive career. Now, a lot of people talk about the greatest jab of all time. Did you have the greatest jab of all time?
Well, you know, I can't say that because I never said, but my jab was a pretty good jab. I can take you down with a jab. I flicked that jab out there. I can cut you up with it. And I did a lot of guys like that. So, you know, I'm not going to say I had the greatest jab. I had a good jab, a decent jab. But I know I had a jab that was better than Muhammad Ali because I compared my jab with him, and I could beat him to the punch. That's all I can say about that.
Now, when you fought Ali, okay, was he your... Now, did you have an idol growing up? Was Ali your idol?
Muhammad Ali,
okay.
Joe Louis was my idol, and, you know, I always wanted to allies, myself, take after Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis and them guys like that. I wanted to be something like that, and, never thought I'd have the opportunity to meet Joe Louis or be around Muhammad Ali.
Now, when you stood in the ring and Ali was on the other side of that ring, did you know that you made it? Like, was that something in your heart that said, okay?
I knew that my day had came. I knew that I would be able to beat one of the guys that I love because I had worked with him as a sparring partner for 4 years, and I knew exactly what he can do and what he couldn't do. So it was like a sad, bittersweet moment for me to fight Muhammad Ali because I knew what he was able to do, and I knew what people would say after I won the fight. So I was like in a no-win situation. But I did what I had to do to win, and I stayed the heavyweight champion of the world.
Absolutely. You were a great champion. It's a pleasure having you on. And one thing I want to commend you on that you don't get credit for is your heart. Now, your heart was absolutely incredible.
Well, my heart comes from my desire to win, my determination to prove wrong, and my determination to show people that I could be the heavyweight champion of the world. That's where my heart comes from.
Well deserved. You had a great career. And thank you so much for coming on KnockOut TV. Larry Holmes.
Hey, KnockOut TV is a knockout.